going to talk a little bit about how smart design is kind of evolving its thinking to incorporate sustainability, and we've kind of thinking about sustainability in the kind of framework of other kind of design issues, and one of the things that we're kind of trying to transition is from more of a user-centered approach to a socially sustainable approach, and I'll explain that a little bit more in the presentation. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the perception and the reality of sustainability, and I think there's an important distinction there which we come into quite often. And then I'm going to talk about two projects, one which is more focused on understanding consumers' attitudes towards green design, and the second which is just taking a really simple object and talking about how we designed it in a more sustainable way. And it's a very complex subject, so I've picked something really simple, so it's going to be a wooden spoon. So smart design was really kind of founded with the idea that design is about people, and I think that's a really important thing for our company. And I think we kind of started off by developing tools to help us understand people and how people interact with products. And in the 90s, we kind of developed this line of kitchen tools for a company called Oxo, and taking the idea of designing for people at the extremes of ability, but also kind of appealing to the mass market. So that was an important moment in like smart design's history. Now we're trying to kind of expand our thinking from universal design to incorporate some of the more sort of global factors and the effect that our design has on society as a whole, as opposed to individual people. So we have a lot of really great tools for understanding people, and I think designers at Smart are very educated about users, and they kind of have a lot of tools for kind of analyzing, but the kind of users that we work with become people that designers empathize with, and I think it's very important that kind of empathy side of it, that they see people using products and they see the kind of issues that people have in their everyday lives. So there are some more scientific tools, but also there's this kind of idea of empathy, which is very important. And I think we can quite often get a little bit too focused on the user because we spend a lot of time with them. We see their problems firsthand, and some of the broader issues get a little bit lost. I think we kind of understand them academically in our heads, but we don't always see those issues firsthand. So they can be a little bit abstract. And I think designers are very visual people, and it's important that we make this whole experience a bit more real and a bit more compelling. So I was in a meeting the other day for a food packaging project, and we were just talking about the marvel of the banana, and you know, we looked at this from a kind of user point of view, and it's this kind of object that has this kind of amazing ergonomic form. You can hold it. It's yellow, so it's got this fantastic branding story in the store, and it's got some great sustainability features. It's got this amazing biodegradable packaging. So when you go into the supermarket, I think at first glance you would think, you know, this is a fantastic sustainable product. But actually, when you get into it a little bit deeper, there's a lot of bad things going on with bananas. So I think the kind of issue that we found that was the most frightening was that really all bananas in the world are a single variety. So they've been bred to be sort of seedless and sterile. And there's this thing called black fungus, which is apparently threatening the global production of bananas. So it could, overnight, all bananas could be eradicated. And it's really because we've kind of developed this variety, which is great to eat, but in the process of that, we've kind of created this very unbiodiverse species. So I think it's important, those kind of two sides of the story, that when we're designing a green product, we think about the kind of perception and about the reality of the sustainability of the product. And I think if we don't address the perception, we're going to end up designing products which people don't really want. And if they're not buying products that are more sustainable, then really there's no point in designing them. So we really need to address that. And I think, you know, we've kind of seen, you know, our clients kind of moving from this this sort of green approach, which is like a very sort of overt approach to sustainability, to this kind of more like blue approach, which is really trying to incorporate sustainability into their brand in a more intelligent way and building upon what they already have in their brand equity. A lot of the clients that we work with aren't startups, they're kind of very established companies. So it's important that we kind of add to their brand rather than sort of overpower it with leaves and grass. But at the same time, we also need to not forget about the kind of core, because I think if we just address perception, then we end up with this greenwashed product. And I think it's important that we kind of understand the kind of impact of how people really use products, and I think that can be very different from how you imagine they're going to use them. We need to get deeper into the supply chain and make that something which we understand more than academically. We actually see it, and we kind of experience it somewhat. We need to examine business models, because design can't change everything, and I think it starts off with the business model and then ends up with kind of design, so we sometimes need to go back and address those bigger issues. And then I think just designers understanding materials and process and afterlife issues are things that everybody needs to be thinking about. So I'm just going to talk about one project that we're working on right now, and a big part of it is trying to understand the attitudes of green, of consumers in general. And I think one approach that we've taken on this project is to try and kind of understand people at the extremes of green sort of behavior. So we've been looking at the person on the right who's very concerned, and the person on the left who's really not interested in green issues at all. And I think by kind of looking at people on either end of the spectrum, we can take this universal design approach, which is going to hopefully appeal to the mass of people that are in the middle. And some of the things, we've been traveling actually all over the world, sort of interviewing people, and a few of the things that have started cropping up in this project, that there kind of seems to be a big gap between people's awareness and people's actions. I think they can believe very strongly in something, but yet the kind of part of their brain that's dictating what they buy when they're in the store can be telling them a very different story. I think another thing that we've seen is people they certainly want to buy things that are green, but they're also into this idea of a green experience. So we've interviewed a lot of people who shop at farmers markets, and we find they go there to buy locally produced organic produce, but they also go there to meet the farmer and to be involved in the culture of a farmer's market and kind of growing things. So there's this very kind of emotional side to this whole thing, I think, as well. The other thing we found is that quite often when people start thinking green, there's a kind of big change in their life. So we've seen that people who suddenly have kids or they move house, that's the time when they start thinking about all this stuff that they have in their lives. And I think it's important that we kind of design things in a way that people kind of adopt them at the right moments in their life. And then the other thing is just the importance of community and kind of feedback. I think quite often people feel it's not worthwhile making a change if they can't see the kind of macro effect of all those changes on society as a whole. So if we can produce a way of giving people more immediate feedback, then I think that's going to be a way to make changes that are a bit more sticky, I think. And then the third thing is just this huge awareness of greenwashing right now, and we're kind of seeing that just any communication just needs to be really kind of simple and very credible, and that's a really important thing. So the second project I'm going to talk about is kind of the opposite end of the spectrum, and it's a really simple product, and it kind of tells a story about the kind of reality of trying to design a more sustainable product. So in 2002, we were approached by a client with this opportunity to redesign a line of wooden kitchen utensils. And we took our normal user-centered approach. We kind of went out and looked at people cooking in the kitchen, holding spoons, using them, and we kind of found some really great insights about how people cook and how a spoon could be better. So we kind of came up with this design and had this really nice shaped handle, and there were some sustainable aspects to it in terms of the kind of wood and the finishes. But as soon as this product got into production, we started finding out that there were a lot of a lot of spoons that were strange shapes. They weren't coming in quite the right shape and form. And when we dug into it a little bit deeper, we kind of found out that actually they were rejecting a huge amount of spoons in the manufacturing process. And I think during the process of designing this a few years ago, we kind of heard a little bit of pushback from the manufacturer. But I think because they were so far away, there was a kind of attitude that we should try and kind of take the higher ground here and be the people who were speaking for the user and making sure that everything was the best for the user. So we kind of went a couple of years later and we documented the manufacturing process. And I think this was a really educational activity for the design team. We didn't actually go there, but we got the factory to take photos of every step in the manufacturing process. And we kind of found out that this whole process was just incredibly manual, you know, basically almost handmade. And that we kind of saw these pieces of wood that the utensils were being made from, and we noticed that they were really thick. And we kind of just suddenly saw like all this waste that was being created in the factory. There was a lot of dust, so workers were all wearing dust masks. There was somebody going around sort of, you know, you could see that it was a very sort of, a very kind of dirty process. And I think we kind of understood that we had to change some things. So we kind of went back and we made a very small change to the product. So we had this curve on the bottom of the spoon, and we basically made it straight. So this is a very, very small change, and I think it did, in a minor way, impact the comfort of the product and made it a little bit more kind of difficult to use. But I think at the same time, when we balanced out some of these issues, we kind of found out that we could actually still make a spoon that was a lot better than all of the others, but we could dramatically reduce the thickness of the piece of wood that the spoon was made from, which basically reduced the amount of material consumed, but also the amount of dust that was produced in the factory. It was also made the spoon a lot easier to use because they were basically carving this curve by hand. So that was why we were getting all these kind of reject rates. So we simplified the kind of design by making this very, very minor change, which really made the product a lot more what we call socially sustainable, because we were kind of looking at users, we were looking at the manufacturing process, and we were kind of understanding how all these things came together. And I think the important thing here was really that by making the process very immediate to the designers, it became something that people were thinking about on a kind of emotional level. And I think sometimes we kind of have a lot of systems for kind of evaluating things, but it's important that also we have that kind of empathy for the people that are making products and the whole process that's involved. Because it's a hard thing to imagine, but I think designers are very good at balancing out kind of a lot of these issues. So I think overall, just to end, I think I'm going to be a little bit short, but moving forward, I think we're kind of trying to understand people as we have in the past, but I think also to try and get designers to appreciate the kind of wider context in which products are sold, supplied, and produced, to create what we call socially sustainable design. Because in the end, we think it's still all about people, and that's what smart design's about. So that's it. Thank you.